But I want to talk about what's happening over the course of the last month with regard to the shutdown. Our air traffic controllers and a lot of those who work at DOT, but throughout government, they haven't received paychecks. And many of these employees, they're the head of household. They have their spouse at home. They have a child or two or three. And when they lose income, they are confronted with real-world difficulties in how they pay their bills. And so for air traffic controllers, they received a partial payment in early October. The second payment, they got a big fat zero, no paycheck at all. Tomorrow, they get a pay stub email on what their next paycheck is going to be. And when that pay stub comes out, that is also going to be zero. So they will have gone a month without any pay. And what we're finding is that our air traffic controllers, because of the financial pressures at home, are taking side jobs. They need to put food on the table, gas in the car, pay their bills. By the way, I do not want them to take side jobs. I want them to show up for work. We have asked them to show up for work, but I'm not naive to understand that they're trying to figure out how they meet their daily obligations. And so because of that, we have seen staffing pressures throughout our airspace. Those who travel will see that we've had more delays. We've had more cancellations. We do not want to see disruptions at the FAA or here at DOT. We don't want that. But our number one priority is to make sure when you travel safely. And that's why, as the administrator and I have been talking throughout the day, his team has been working for the last 24, 36, 48 hours crunching data. We're noticing that there's additional pressure that's building in the system. And again, our priority is to make sure that you're safe. And so we're going to talk about additional measures that we are going to take that's going to reduce the risk profile in the national airspace. And I'm going to turn it over to the administrator to do that as he walks through what that plan is going to look like. I anticipate there will be additional disruptions. There will be frustration. We are working with the airlines. They're going to work with passengers. But in the end, our sole role is to make sure that we keep this airspace as safe as possible. The administrator is going to talk about all of the tools we're going to deploy. One of them, though, is going to be that there is going to be a 10% reduction in capacity at 40 of our locations. The administrator is going to tell you that this is data-based. This is not based on what airline travels, has more flights out of what location. This is about where is the pressure and how do we alleviate the pressure. And so I want to thank him for, again, him and his team's great work. He'll lay out what the specifics are of this plan, and then we're happy to take questions from all of you. Brian Bedford.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Again, as the Secretary said, our primary mission at the FAA is to manage the airspace in the safest manner possible. That is our only focus. What we have been monitoring on a daily basis, frankly hourly basis, is looking at all of the metrics that we use to surveil the NAS and its health and its well-being. And for the most part, we're happy to report that it is running as efficiently today in terms of its safety metrics as it was prior to the lapse. But as we dig deeper into the data, what we find are issues of fatigue and that our flight controllers are experiencing. And we see that through voluntary safety disclosure reports coming in from commercial air transport pilots. That data has allowed us to focus not on the NAS as a whole, but on specific markets where we're seeing some of these reports come to us. And as we slice the data more granularly, we are seeing pressures build in a way that we don't feel will, if we allow it to go unchecked, will allow us to continue to tell the public that we operate the safest airline system in the world. And we're not going to react to that, and we intend to be proactive. So we're going to implement measures with our commercial airline industry partners, but this is going to go beyond commercial airspace. It's going to include restrictions on space launches, restrictions on VFR traffic in certain markets that have continued FAA controller staffing triggers, and a host of other countermeasures, if you will, that will give us the highest level of comfort that we're maintaining the safest aviation space in the world. And that's the mission. But we do recognize that the controllers have been working fastidiously for the last 5 weeks with this huge burden over their head of lack of compensation. And we are starting to see some evidence that that fatigue is building in the system in ways that we feel we need to work towards relieving some of that pressure. So again, as the Secretary said, we've identified 40 high traffic environment markets. We'll be happy to share that later. We have decided that a 10% reduction in scheduled capacity would be appropriate to, again, continue to take the pressure off of our controllers. And as we continue to see staffing triggers, there will be additional measures that will be taken in those specific markets. Again, I think it's a holistic plan. I really appreciate the men and women at the FAA who have been working this situation from the get-go. I want to applaud the controllers who continue to come to work on a daily basis, keeping our system safe. But I also want to recognize the fact that the data is telling us we need to do more, and we are going to do more. And I want to reassure the American travelers that it is absolutely safe to fly in the American skies. So with that, I'd be happy to turn it over to you, Mr. Secretary, and or take any questions that you have.
Yeah, I want to reiterate, this is proactive. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation, I think the administrator said we don't want the horse out of the barn and then look back and say there were issues we could have taken that we didn't. So we are going to proactively make decisions that keep the airspace safe. With that, we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Dave Shepard, so just to confirm, those restrictions start Friday, is that correct?
Those are going to start Friday morning.
And how are you going to apportion those among the airports, the airlines? Is this something the airlines have to do, come up with their own 10%?
And I'll let Brian address that, but again, it's going to be based on the locations, the 40 locations that we feel the pressure, and how that's going to be implemented. Brian, I'll let you answer that.
Yes, well, we'll be meeting with the airline community this evening to talk about how we'll move to implementation. We want to do this in an organized way. We want to make sure that planes get where they need to go for maintenance and crews get to where they need to be as we start to implement this drawdown in service. But it will be restricted to these 40 high volume traffic markets. We're going to ask the airlines to work with us collaboratively to reduce their schedules pro rata through the day. So we're going to look for a ratable reduction across these 40 markets over the next 48 hours.
So back of the envelope, that's 4,000, 3,500, 4,000 flights, and it's a significant number. And how do you think the airspace or the system is going to handle that dramatic reduction in such a short period of time?
Well, again, we're trying to lean into the fact that when we see pressures building in these 40 markets, we just can't ignore it, and we're not going to wait for a safety problem to truly manifest itself when the early indicators are telling us we can take action today to prevent, things from deteriorating. So the system is extremely safe today. It will be extremely safe tomorrow. And if the pressures continue to build even after we take these measures, we'll come back and take additional measures. So again, we're trying to be prescriptive, surgical, put the relief where the relief will do the most good. But again, we are not going to do anything that will compromise the safety of air transport in the United States.
Mr. Secretary? Thank you. Grady Trimble with Fox Business. I'm wondering, in the same vein as David's question, is there a plan to make sure that one airline isn't disproportionately affected, or one route or city or multiple cities aren't disproportionately affected by this? And to your knowledge, when was the last time this type of thing happened, and how did it go?
Well, I'm not aware in my 35-year history in the aviation market where we've had a situation where we're taking these kind of measures. Then again, we're in new territory in terms of government shutdowns. Also, I think we've learned things through the mishap, the tragic accident with DCA and PSA 5342. So our surveillance on the NAS is much different today than it was even a year ago. The data that we're looking at is much different and more granular today than it was a year ago, and we simply aren't going to ignore that. So again, I think it is unusual, just as the shutdown is unusual, just on the fact that our controllers haven't been paid for a month is unusual. These are unusual times, and we look forward to a time when we can get back to business as usual.
And how do you apply it proportionately to each airline, or is that not part of the plan?
No, it will be proportionate. We'll be working through that with the airlines this evening as we start to roll this out. Recognizing there will be no perfect solution. There are some airlines that operate less than daily service, so how do you reduce 10% of one? We will work through those issues. We certainly don't want to disrupt service availability in individual city pairs. So we will take all of those factors into
Just
consideration.
one other point on the controllers. I think compared to other shutdowns, our controllers, again, though we are not full staffed, I've laid that out. I think the performance of our controllers showing up for work compared to other shutdowns, I'm proud of them. Many of them have showed up. But to the administrator's point, many of the same ones who show up continue to show up. Some of those who don't show up continue to not show up, which means we have those who come to work, they're working longer hours, they're working more days, and that's some of the pressure that we're seeing on them, and we want to alleviate that pressure before it would become an issue.
You're listening to Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy talking about a 10% reduction in capacity at 40 locations starting Friday at U.S. airports. He also said we are 2,000 air traffic controllers short. Air traffic controllers have not been paid in a month, as you know. And he said, quote, we want to reduce risk profile and there will be additional disruption. So again, 10% reduction in capacity at 40 locations starting Friday morning. So joining me now is Captain Laura Einsetler, an experienced pilot with a major U.S. airline. Let's start with your thoughts on this 10% reduction.
It is extremely frustrating to once again see our aviation industry taking the brunt of what is something that's out of our control. In this case, I understand that they're trying to mitigate some safety risks with the shutdown. This does greatly increase safety risks. When you have controllers with high responsibility levels, they do shift work all the time. And to now be added with the stress of how can I even pay for my rent or my mortgage or put food on the table for my family. And now with the drawdown, we're going to just start seeing the airlines drawing down as well, which means staffing drawdowns at the airlines as well, if this continues.
Something that stood out to me was they were talking about fatigue, and that's obviously a hot button issue when you're talking about safety and passenger safety and airline safety. Can you address that? What's happening internally if there is that fatigue happening?
Well, everyone has to remember that, we fly all night, they work all night. We have different shifts all the time. So we're constantly under different shift changes to, of course, provide safe flying for the public and everywhere where everyone wants to go. So then when you're working overtime, over hours, just to try to kind of stopgap or backfill, to just try to keep the facilities open to help support us that are in the skies with all the passengers, it becomes a big issue, and it is, and that's what we're seeing.
Certainly. So what does a 10% reduction mean? When we talk about 40 U.S. airports, that has to kind of trickle down to all airports and all connecting flights. What will that mean come Friday morning?
It means that people's flights are going to be getting canceled, and especially as we're going into the holidays, as far as my own opinion, but when our policymakers, our budget makers, they're not getting paid and their flights are canceled, then I think things will be moving even faster. So right now, our job is to be, our safety is our priority. So we need to make sure at all times, in all circumstances, we are flying everyone safely to where they want to go. And it's now a consideration of decision making for the general public as well.
Captain Laura Einsetler, appreciate your expertise. Thank you.